Welcome to the Fright Lab. I'm Lucas Yoakum. It is now the 10th entry into our 31 Days of Horror, 31 for 31, whatever we're calling it, challenge. And tonight we are covering a film from 2015, and it's a movie that I am shockingly passionate about. A little film called Savageland. So what is this movie about, and why should you care? I've been thinking about this for a while. In fact, this is actually my second attempt to record this episode, because my first attempt, I realized that I wasn't quite nailing down what I was after, and I'm very happy that I decided to wait until tonight so that I could have a little different feeling about it and come at it with some fresh eyes, some fresh ears, maybe even a little fresh mind. So what is Savageland? Savageland is a fairly small budgeted film filmed in the style of like a mockumentary. You guys know that I have a thing for what I call horror cinema verite, but we would think of it probably most as found footage, mockumentary, something along those lines. The movie's interesting in as much that on one hand, it gets the mockumentary tone very, very correct. To my eyes, it looks very strongly like circa's 2010, maybe 2008 to 2012, like an HBO true crime documentary thing. Those of you guys who watched a lot of that on like streaming cable services will know exactly what I'm talking about, that there's a very particular look and approach and style that is used, especially this use of covering kind of small town subjects, but putting them in a greater context. It does a good job of that. It actually nails that aesthetic and that feeling very, very well in a way that I actually really enjoy. I do worry that for those of you who aren't familiar with that aesthetic, it might seem a little bit of a strange choice, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. It carries on well enough. So let's talk about the plot real quick, because it requires a small amount of explanation. The story centers around this small little border town called Sangre de Cristo, which is on the American side of the border, and it apparently has a population of like 60 people. It's, kind of one of those forgotten small towns in the Southwest. And then one terrible night, a resident of the town who's kind of a day laborer, he's here questionably, it's believed that he is not a legal resident. He is charged by local police for going on a one-man, one-night killing spree. He goes to prison, he's facing the death penalty. But it turns out that this one particular fellow who is accused of all of these crimes was also something of a hobby photographer. And then as the story unfolds, it emerges that the night of this terrible incident that the film centers on, he was out getting ready to shoot some photos, and he catches the entire insanity of the event. And it turns out, and I'm not spoiling anything of the plot here, it turns out he wasn't responsible for the murder. He was in fact one of the only ones who was able to explain it. Now, I don't want to explain more about the plot directly, because it's not like it's some incredible twist or some incredible shock, but it's hard to explain the thing that happened other than to say an orgy of violence erupts in this town for very unexplained reasons. Now, this is horrifying for a number of reasons, obviously, in part because an orgy of violence erupting anywhere would be terrifying. But the fact that it is so inexplicable, so unexplained, it almost feels Lovecraftian, but Lovecraftian implies a cosmic horror, right? And this isn't terrestrial horror like my opinion of Shin Godzilla. This is something else entirely. It's this fear of the completely inexplicable. It is the terror of an almost absurd scenario. It's really something special. And then the other reason why the horror of this film works is the way it's portrayed, because the only thing you see is not some high tableau, well choreographed scenes of shocking violence. You get grainy, bizarre photographs that look almost too surreal. They look very realistic. The photos are, for the most part, incredibly well done throughout this entire movie, actually. But you get 30 some odd terrifying still frame black and white barely lit photos. As someone who at one point in his life did a lot more photography as a hobby, especially doing kind of experimental photography and photo processing stuff like I was working on, these photos are especially chilling and especially unpleasant. It's almost hard to explain unless you are a photographer, right? Unless you're doing that, it's very difficult to contextualize how difficult it can be to make a photo look that scary. The other thing that this movie does extremely well, and it's one of the reasons I recommend it, is editing. This particular kind of mockumentary crime show thing requires a very particular editing to, one, look correct, to look like a product of its time period, but to also tell the story. Of all of the tools in the filmmaker's toolkit that really helps sell a film one way or another, editing is the great unsung. You know, there's that great story that Alfred Hitchcock would always tell, is that if you film a scene where three people are sitting around a table and then a bomb blows up 5 minutes into their conversation, that's not scary. It might be surprising, but it's not scary. But if throughout the course of that 5-minute conversation, you are letting the audience know there is a bomb under the table and it has a timer, it builds the tension. What's going to happen in that moment? Then it blows up and it's still scary. The editing that was required to make this work is practically a masterclass. I think you would really, really have to have a good grip on that. I don't actually know much about the process of filmmaking for this movie, and I really would like to go back and study it some, because it is such a treat of a film. Learning how it was made, I think, would be really good. So as far as I'm concerned, Savageland is a movie that, for me, I find incredibly disturbing. I find it incredibly scary, but not in a very overt way. Like, I really enjoyed movies like Longlegs or Hereditary, you know, the films that keep getting lumped in with like the scariest films of like the last 15 years. And yeah, I like those movies and I think they're very scary. This is scary on a very different level. And there is a pretty heavy dose of like social commentary that feels a little prophetic and a little prescient, but it's more about the horror of the film. Once things really kick off, a lot of the social commentary stuff, it doesn't take a back seat. It's just not as prevalent. At any rate, if you like your horror to be very, very unusual, if you like horror that comes from a different place, that is also still wholly coherent while maintaining a very experimental, very avant-garde kind of edge to it, Savageland's a great choice. It is currently, and has been for about 6 months now, streaming on Tubi. So it's free with ads. It doesn't cost you anything to go watch this other than some ad time that I know everybody hates, but it is what it is. So if you haven't seen Savageland and you're looking for something a little freaky but a little cerebral in your diet this year, man, it is a fine, fine choice. So, to the fans, I have to ask, have you seen Savageland? And if so, would you recommend it to others? And if you haven't, are you gonna end this episode and go run to Tubi and go watch something free and spooky tonight? Whatever you end up doing, you should let us know what you think by reaching out to us at thefrightlabpodcast@gmail.com. We are available there constantly. We are also available on basically all social media. Just look up The Fright Lab. We're available on YouTube. So if you would prefer to watch your podcast, I don't understand how to describe that, but you know what I mean. If you want to watch your podcast, you can do it on YouTube. We can also be found on Discord. That link will be at our website, as well as basically all of our social media. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys to go watch a very, very scary movie. And while you're doing that, I want you to remember that The Fright Lab is written and researched by me, Lucas Yoakum, and it is produced and engineered by the one and only co-host of the show, Mr. Joseph Wren. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all again very soon. Happy October, everyone.